Democratic Alliance leader John Steenhuisen says the DA is the only party that has a proven record that it can deliver on the commitments it makes to improve the lives of South Africans. Steenhuisen was addressing thousands of supporters gathered on the lawns of the Union buildings in Pretoria on Saturday as the party launched its election manifesto. Steenhuisen says the winds of change are blowing in South Africa. To unpack the DA's manifesto and if those winds of change are actually going to bear any fruit, we're joined by Professor Susan Booysen. She's an analyst and author and visiting Honorary Professor at Wits University. Prof, thank you. Good to have you. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Leanne, and your viewers. Thank you.
So obviously we're seeing now political parties all launching their manifestos. We've seen the EFF, we've got the DA, the ANC are coming up, IFP, Freedom Front Plus, all of these are coming out. But let's focus on the DA now, making lots of promises to voters. They're saying they'll create 2 million jobs. That's one of the big promises that they've made. There are a lot of other promises. In fact, 7 key facts. We'll go over them. But what do you think about what the DA have said? Do you think what they are promising is achievable?
Leanne, there certainly has a wide range of promises, and that's very typical of all election manifesto campaigns of political parties. There will always be more promises than what will be realized, because at the end of the day, all these promises have to meet reality and have to be moderated via a state that's also, as the DA emphasizes amply in this manifesto, a state that is highly incapacitated, a state that is in crisis, and we know all South Africans are certainly living through many of these aspects of the crisis, and this manifesto's so-called apex priorities certainly touch on the bulk of these key crises and challenges. Yet it has to be implemented, and here the DA appears to have costed things, appears to have some reality checks on it. They could have gone higher in many of their promises than what we see here on this piece of paper. So I get the sense that they have built in reality checks, that they have moderated their demands in terms of what might be possible. And of course, such a crucial aspect of the DA's and all political parties' election campaigns this time around is that we are at this point of change in South Africa, where the chances are very good that no single party, and that means also not the ANC, will be gaining an outright majority in this election, which means in all likelihood, there will be a coalition government, or more likely than not there will be. And political parties will then also, after the election, when their result is known, have to negotiate their promises to the electorate and have to find averages, have to find concentric points of convergence with other political parties. And that, for me, is a very interesting thing to watch out for, as we will be seeing more and more of these parties' campaign manifestos being launched in the next week or so, also the ANC's. What I'm certainly doing is looking for those points of convergence, where come the possible reality, probable reality of coalition government post-election, what will the points be, the points of convergence? What will be ideological convergence between different political parties? For example, the role of the state, privatization. The DA in this manifesto comes with quite a lot of points of partnership between private sector, public sector. We know the ANC in its social compacting is also very big on that kind of rhetoric. The EFF in its manifesto launched last week is very strong on a crucial, central, enlarged role for the state. So for me, these are very important points of convergence to watch out for as we look at what are the likelihoods of these promises in the manifestos being realized.
So very interesting. I mean, if we look at the key priorities, and they outline them in 7 key priorities. So we've spoken a little bit to the issue of job creation. So they want to create 2 million jobs. That's the first thing they're saying. Lift 6 million people out of poverty. That's number 2. Crush corruption by abolishing cadre deployment in favor of merit-based appointments. Then they say, end load shedding and water shedding. Number 5, triple the number of grade 4 learners who can read for meaning. That's the other one. Another one, half the rate of violent crime, including murder, attempted murder, and gender-based violence, and then ensure quality healthcare for all, irrespective of economic status. So those were, in a nutshell, those 7 points that they are promising. He did it in a very quick manner. I think it was about a half an hour that he came through, gave it through, spoke to all of them. So, you know, when you look at these on paper, you look and see what they are promising. Some people are saying the devil is in the detail, and are they giving us enough detail? It's easy to make promises, but can they achieve this? And again, I ask you in terms of particularly with regard to grants, do you think that they can afford to start upping all of the grants now? Because that's another thing that they're saying, that they want to work towards ensuring that South Africans get a higher grant system, which is going to cost a lot more money to the state.
Yes, indeed, Leanne. This is, it may be modest in some respects, in most respects, I would say, given how big the need is, how much needs to be done in South Africa, needs to be corrected in South Africa. It may be seen as modest in those ways, but still it is expensive. All of these political parties are going to give us these expensive ones. Possibly some of the parties, like the EFF, one of the points of analysis have been that that one was particularly expensive given the state's capacity and how much needs to be done on a state that is very compromised, on a state that fiscally is driven to the limits at this time, where income is not flowing in, basically because poverty is so high, because the economy is not growing. And these are some of the incredible strong walls into which all political parties, and certainly also the DA in this case, is running when it tries to make promises of this nature. And the electorate will have to weigh that up and see to which party, which set of parties across the board have got the best prospects to make real on those prospects. So yes, I think one can criticize, find fault on individual points, definitely, because all of these political parties, and the DA most definitely included here, will face severe challenges in delivering on any extensions of their election promises.
I mean, we could go deeper into all of the election promises, but right now these are promises. But let's look at the bigger picture here. Do you think the DA will remain the official opposition in South Africa? When we go to the polls, we've seen the machine called the EFF, and we've seen many parties that seem to be more focused on what the EFF are doing than anything else. But the DA, where do they fit into this? They've been the opposition, the official opposition for years. Many are talking to the fact that this may also be a bit of a threat to them still running the Western Cape as they do already. This could be in jeopardy. Official opposition, Western Cape, do you think they'll grow in these elections, or do you think this could be a big decline for them?
Yeah, and it's such a vexed question, because I wish I could accurately forecast what will be happening in these elections. We know the broader dynamics that has been changing, and the big point of change is that the ANC has been in decline. All public opinion polls, the credible ones, the ones within the reasonable margins of error, the percentages that we say will not deviate much from the forecasts, indicate that the ANC will really struggle. I believe it is in with a small chance to retain an outright majority, but increasing less so as we move closer to the election. And that is the big change that we're seeing in this election. The opposition parties, including the DA in this case, has not had the opportunity in the 30 years of democracy to say that grouping of parties, in this case the multi-party charter, has got some chance of growing to be a challenging bloc in this election. We do not, by current statistics, see the DA growing to such an extent that it and its partners in a multi-party charter will be the strongest 50% bloc in the results of these elections. But yet there could be an incredible stalemate following the final results of these elections late May, apparently.
Yeah.
And the first case now since democracy in 1994, we are likely to see a result in which there will be three strong blocs, multi-party blocs. And that is this case, since we're dealing with the DA, the multi-party charter DA bloc, the ANC bloc, and so far it is largely the ANC and a conglomerate of small political parties. It could be in the region of up to 5 or 8 of these small parties, depending on how they do the election. If they come with 1 or 2% of the national vote, they could easily help the ANC build up to a 50% bloc. However, should the MK party, Jacob Zuma's, should he outlast this campaign and actually deliver in elections, we've seen them doing reasonably well in by-elections and doing fairly okay in some of the opinion polls, better than expected. There could be a third bloc, and we do not know whether EFF might associate with a bloc like that. Ideologically, if we look to return to my opening point of what the different political parties are stating in their manifestos, ideologically, what kind of convergence there is between parties, it seems more likely that EFF may align with a party like MKP and a little string of small parties like that, but of different sizes. But we could see three-party blocs in this election come the results. And that would mean there would have to be serious negotiations between political parties to either form an outright majority on a more permanent basis or to reach a point of what we know in local government coalitions as confidence and supply agreements, where some parties come together and say, we don't form a formal coalition, but we agree to support you on crucial elections, maybe elections of president or on crucial budgetary matters. So rather than outright majorities, we could be facing an election where there are three blocs and not exactly a 50% majority.
It certainly is a very difficult one to call, and one that's really everywhere. I mean, and you can see from all of this, I mean, we even had the DA leader, John Steenhuisen, standing on a stage screaming Dubula Nyanga, and that in itself has gotten a lot of people talking with regard to its meaning. But I think I read somewhere on the DA's page, they were saying that it's shoot for the moon, or the Moonshot Pack, or whatever the case may be. I have no idea, but there are a lot of interpretations on this whole Dubula Nyanga. But that's politics. You know how this happens. It's a show, and that's kind of where I think they were aiming for, but may have got lost in the meaning. But this Moonshot Pact, this whole idea of bringing a diverse group of parties together, is there merit in this? Do you think that is going to work?
Well, if we look at coalitions and coalition politics, there is strong ideological and policy preference convergence between the members of this bloc. And as far as coalitions go, that is about as close as they can get to getting this to work, rather than post-election conflagrations of diverse parties that are just in it for positions and, yes, some individual privilege associated with that. So as far as coalitions go, the Moonshot Pack can probably work, but we do not know whether they will get a convenient or close enough to a majority to give that gravitas to a coalition of that nature. And that will depend on how strong the other parties emerge out of this. Indeed. And that is the story of this Moonshot Pact.
Yeah.
It depends less on its own strengths than on the weakness of the other parties.
All right. I want to quickly just focus a little bit about the DA. We saw their manifesto. We've spoken to that, but there's also the big story and also one of their promises in the manifesto about cadre deployment. So on that note, the DA has given the ANC a deadline. Well, the Constitutional Court saying 5 o'clock today, they have to hand over complete records of its cadre deployment committee that dates back to the 1st of January 2013. What do you make of the DA's move to get hold of those records, and do you think the ANC are going to comply?
Well, the ANC has indicated that it will comply in some form or no. We don't yet know what's the nature, the state of the records will be that they will be handing over. By all the indications, they will be handing over something. It could be pretty chaotic. They will probably try to make it, to let it be chaotic, to give sustenance to their point that they didn't really keep records, etc. Although all indications are that there are records, and that they will be handed over rather reluctantly. And for the ANC, this comes at a particularly bad time, in the middle of election campaign times. And this also gives the DA, has given the DA, much credibility in its claims that it needs to defeat this thing called cadre deployment, and that was one of the big reasons for corruption in government. And so the ANC, on the eve of a major, crucial election, has never been in a point, I believe, as weak as this one, where the main opposition party is really threatening it in this way.
Should be interesting to see what comes out of this. Threats of arrest everywhere if they don't hand this over. And then, of course, the talk of particularly judges and cadre deployment in judges. So 5 o'clock, that is the deadline. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But Prof. Booysen, thank you. Thank you so much for your time as always. Professor Susan Booysen, analyst and author, as well as visiting an honorary professor at Wits University, unpacking the Democratic Alliance's manifesto that was launched over the weekend. I mean, it's out there for all to read. Lots of promises being made. They have 7 points as we've spoken to them, including the job creation, 6 million people out of poverty, ending load shedding and water shedding, the rate of violent crime to come down, healthcare for all of these kind of provinces that are listed in the DA's manifesto.